Welcome to the Stonevault. This is part of a series of dungeon guides we're releasing in preparation for The War Within. Our guides are heavily focused on the mechanics for normal, heroic, and mythic 0 difficulty. First boss, Earthen Defense and Neutralization Ottoman, or Edna. Let's go over the big ability of Edna, Volatile Spikes. This boss will spawn volatile spikes, which are big rock pillars that need to be destroyed. Be careful. If you destroy them all at the same time, it might wipe your group. Each time a volatile spike is destroyed, it does party-wide AoE damage. When Edna casts Earth Shatter, all of the remaining volatile spikes will be exploded, causing mass damage, and this will hurt a lot. Players like Pallies with Bubble or Hunters with Turtle can destroy them. Edna also casts Refracting Beam at 3 players, and the beam will destroy the volatile spike. The beam goes through the player, so there's no need to move behind the pillar, just make sure you're lined up.
Tanks, the boss is going to attack you with Seismic Smash, which does a lot of physical damage and puts a debuff on you. When that debuff runs out or is dispelled, the boss gains a shield. The shield reduces the damage the boss takes by 25% for 5 seconds, but at the same time, you as the tank will also get a shield. If you're struggling to survive, ask for the dispel right away before the smash comes out, just for a little extra defensive. As the keys go higher, you'll want to make sure that you're balancing this with CDs so the DPS aren't using their big abilities while the boss is taking less damage.
Next up, Skarmorak.
Tanks, get ready because the first ability is Crystalline Smash, and this is going to do a lot of shadow damage to you, and the boss loses part of itself and does shadow damage to players 6 yards from where the crystal shard lands. These are going to be purple swirls on the ground that you're going to want to avoid, and healers, be ready to heal.
You need to DPS down the crystal shards, but when they die, they do more AoE damage with Crystalline Eruption. They'll also apply a debuff to all targets, increasing the damage taken from Crystalline Eruption by 100% for 3 seconds. So you want the crystals dead before the boss casts Crystalline Eruption.
At 100 energy, the boss casts Reclaim, which clears the shards, but it's also going to give the boss a shield for every crystal that wasn't destroyed, so that shield can get beefy. While the boss has the shield, they'll also cast Void Discharge, which does group-wide AoE and increases the damage done to everyone while the channel's going off. Healers, make sure your CDs are ready.
The boss will cast Unstable Crash twice before the shield phase. The crystal shards will spawn where the players were standing, so players can walk through the crystals to gain a damage increase to shields, and healers get an increase to healing by 50%. The buff also stacks, so eat 'em up. This will help you all survive the Void Discharge. Next up, Master Machinists Brock and Dorlita.
This encounter has 2 bosses, Brock and Dory. These bosses need to die at the same time. If one dies, the other will radiate fire damage and increase damage done by 75%, so make sure you're killing both at the same time.
Brock activates the ventilation over the duration of the fight. This causes damage to players standing close to the vents, and it also spawns lava pools on the ground. Yeah, so don't stand in those. The boss also casts Flaming Expulsion, which is a giant fireball and gets shot out in one direction. Avoid it! The lava pools on the floor can be cleared if the fireball goes over them. Flaming Expulsion will be aimed in the direction of a random player.
Dory is also kind of a tank bully. Her ability is called Molten Hammer, which is just her auto attack that does molten damage. While this happens, Brock will be casting Molten Metal on a player, slowing them by 50% for 8 seconds. This is an ability that can and should be interrupted. Both bosses have the Scrap Song ability. Brock causes loose scrap to be formed into a cube that gets sent across the room, causing big physical damage, and if you're hit by it, you're also stunned for 3 seconds. Don't stand in its path, make sure you're keeping an eye out. And then Dory's cube gets put in the middle of the room and explodes within a few seconds, so don't stand close or you're going to be dead.
Rinse and repeat these mechanics until the bosses fall over. Void Speaker Irish. The boss will open several void rifts, which pull players into them, and if you get sucked in all the way, it results in sadness and death.
Players will get inflicted with Void Corruption, dealing shadow damage every 3 seconds until removed, and the damage is increased by 25% every 3 seconds. Players can remove this by moving to a Void Rift, just don't go all the way in. In Mythic, these Void Portals will despawn and move to random locations around the boss each time a player has cleansed themselves. Try to pay attention to where they are so you don't get stuck and can't cleanse your debuff.
Entropic Reckoning creates a large purple circle around a player, and it will explode after a short duration, and it's going to leave a purple pool of poo on the ground. So don't stand in that. Drop your circles away from the Void Rift.
And this boss wouldn't be complete without a large frontal cone, Unbridled Void. If you're within 45 yards of the cone, you're going to get smacked with that shadow damage, so try and avoid that. The cone gets wider the further away you are from the boss.
Thanks so much for watching, and we hope that you enjoyed our dungeon guide.